In a small rainy town, an ordinary auto mechanic moved the entire community to tears. It all started when he fixed a desperate single mother's car for free, but unexpectedly, the small act that set off a chain of events that changed his fate. But what surprised everyone the most was the real reason he did it, an old promise from the past. When that secret was revealed, no one could hold back their tears. And in the end, that garage not only repaired cars, but also repaired broken lives. Welcome to Kindness Stories, where small acts of kindness have the power to change lives. Today we'll explore the heartwarming story of an ordinary mechanic whose kindness ignited a fire that warmed an entire community. Don't leave, because the real reason behind his actions will leave you in tears. The sky in Riverside was gray that day, and heavy raindrops were falling, splashing against the windows of Evelyn Carter's old car. The car shook violently, then suddenly made an unusual clack, clack, clack sound. Evelyn's heart clenched. "No, not now," she muttered, glancing at her watch. It was 4 p.m. and she had only 30 minutes to get to her second shift at the restaurant across town. Worse, her daughter Lily was home alone. She was only 7 years old, but she already had severe asthma. Evelyn had asked a neighbor to watch Lily, but she couldn't be late again without risking being fired. Lily looked at Evelyn and said, she pulled over, turned off the engine, and tried to start it again. But this time, all she heard was a constant clicking noise. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, trying to calm herself. "This can't go on," she whispered, her heart filled with despair. Just then, a deep voice rang out from behind. "Car broken down, do you need help?" asked Boo. Evelyn looked up and saw a man in a faded gray coat standing by the car door. His short, light brown hair was wet from the rain, but his face remained calm. He held an oil towel in his hand and looked at her with sincere eyes. Yes, but I'm afraid I don't have enough money to fix the car," Evelyn sighed, trying to calm herself down. The man smiled faintly. "I didn't ask how much money you had. I just asked if you needed help." He pointed to a small repair shop about 20 meters away. The sign was old, the paint peeling, but the words were still clearly visible. Walker Repair Shop. "Let's pull the car in there. I'm Ryan Walker, the owner," he said briefly. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, but then agreed. She had no choice. In the pouring rain, Ryan pushed her car into the garage with the help of a co-worker. The smell of oil, the clang of metal, and the radio playing old music filled the small space. Ryan quickly crawled under the car and checked the engine. After about 10 minutes, he stood up and wiped his hands on a greasy towel. "The fuel pump is broken. A new one will cost about $300. Evelyn's heart sank. $300 was a lot of money. It was a month's worth of Lily's medication. I don't have enough money right now," she fumbled, her voice trailing off. Ryan looked at her for a moment, his eyes no longer serious but thoughtful. He sighed, shook his head slowly and said, "It's okay, I'll replace your fuel pump, for free." Evelyn was stunned. "But why did you do that? I can't accept this kindness without giving something back." Ryan smirked. "Everyone needs a little luck. I'm just trying to do my part. When I can, help others." Evelyn bit her lip, her eyes filling with tears. Those words lit a small, warm fire in her heart. She couldn't stop thanking Ryan, even though she knew no words would be enough. As Evelyn waited in the shop, Ryan continued his work in silence. His hands quickly removed the old fuel pump, his eyes focused. His mind, however, was not entirely in the present. Old memories suddenly flooded back. Ryan was just 10 years old at the time, living with his parents and 2 younger brothers in a small house on the outskirts of Riverside. The Walkers were poor, and his parents worked in a steel mill. The family's only car, a beat-up Dodge, was their most prized possession. But one morning, as Ryan's father started the car to leave for work, the engine suddenly gave out, leaving the family in the midst of a storm of anxiety. Without a car, Ryan's father couldn't go to work, and a day off meant losing precious paychecks. Ryan stood by the window, watching his mother burst into tears. "What are we going to do, Mark? Who's going to fix our car? We don't have any money." The next day, Ryan's father decided to take the car to the shop of Mr. Sam Hartman, an old mechanic in town. Mr. Sam was known to be strict, but extremely skilled. When Mr. Sam learned of the Walker family's situation, he agreed to fix the car without charging a penny. Ryan sat quietly on the bench in the workshop, watching Mr. Sam work diligently. He said nothing, but gave his apprentice a few brief instructions. After 2 hours, the car started up again. Dusk was settling, and the car could make out his shadows draining into the woods around him. Ryan's father held Mr. Sam's hand and said with a trembling voice, "I don't know how to thank you. I promise to pay you back after I get paid." But Mr. Sam just shook his head and replied briefly, "No need, Mark, but if you have the opportunity, do the same for others." That moment is etched in the mind of Ryan, a 10-year-old boy, naive but perceptive enough to recognize the power of kindness. On the way home, he asked his father, "Dad, why did he do that? He doesn't know me." Ryan's father looked out the window, silent for a long moment before replying, "Bro, that's kindness, son. When someone helps you, it's your responsibility to help someone else. That's how the world goes on." Years later, as an adult, Ryan often recalled that moment. Sam was now old, retired, living with his children and grandchildren. But what he had done for the Walker family had become a burning flame in Ryan's heart. That was why, whenever someone was in trouble, even a stranger like Evelyn, he always tried to help. Ryan stared at the rusted fuel pump he had just removed. He smiled faintly, remembering his old self. An image of Mr. Sam flashed through his mind, and he repeated his words softly. "I was wise to remember. Where you have the chance, do the same for others." The rain in Riverside didn't stop until late afternoon. After Evelyn's car was fixed, she sat behind the wheel, her hands gripping the steering wheel. She didn't seem to want to start the car right away, but instead stared at Ryan Walker, who was standing outside the window, adjusting the collar of his rain-soaked jacket. "Thank you, Ryan, thank you so much," Evelyn said, her voice breaking. Ryan just smiled, waving his hand as if it was no big deal. "Go on, you have things to do, right?" Evelyn started the car. The engine purred like a new song. Everything worked smoothly, and for the first time that day, she felt a glimmer of hope. "Someday I will repay you," Evelyn said again, her tears falling uncontrollably. Ryan shook his head, smiling gently. "You don't owe me anything, but if you have the chance, help others the way I helped you." The truck rolled out of the workshop, leaving a trail of water on the road. Ryan watched it for a long time, then turned back to work. To him, it was just another day, nothing to think about. But for Evelyn, the story is completely different. The next day, at the restaurant where Evelyn worked, she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. While sitting down after work, she wrote a social media post with a photo of the Walker repair shop. Her article was brief but full of emotion. "Yesterday I had trouble with my car and thought I wouldn't be able to go to work, but a stranger named Ryan fixed my car for free without asking for anything in return. He said, 'Everybody needs a little luck.' His act may have been small, but to me, it meant the world. If anyone in this town needs a place to get their car fixed, come to Walker's Auto Repair. There are people like Ryan left in this world." She had no idea her post would be shared more than 0.0000 times in just 24 hours. Comments began pouring in, not just from Riverside residents, but from strangers everywhere. Amazing, the world needs more people like Ryan. We need more stories like this every day. Does anyone have the address of the factory? I want to bring some cakes to give away. But most notable among those comments was one name in particular, Victor Reed. Victor Reed is no stranger. He is a successful businessman who left Riverside more than 10 years ago to pursue his entrepreneurial dream. Now he is the CEO of a prominent technology company, regularly appearing in business magazines. Victor accidentally read Evelyn's post while scrolling through social media before the meeting. The name Ryan Walker made him stop. A vague memory flooded back. Wasn't that his high school classmate? He clicked on the post, reading every line. Victor's heart was filled with a strange feeling. It's still him. He hasn't changed a bit. Victor immediately booked a plane ticket and decided to return to Riverside. He didn't tell anyone, nor did he have any specific plans, but he knew one thing. He had to see Ryan. 3 days later, the rain fell again on Riverside. But this time, Ryan didn't know that a shiny black SUV had just pulled up in front of the factory. He plopped back into his seat with a burning sensation. Ryan was busy fixing a customer's brakes when a voice came from behind him. "Still as hardworking as ever, Walker." He turned around and saw a man in a long coat, holding a black umbrella and smiling familiarly. Victor Reed entered the workshop, his smile brighter than the ceiling light. "Victor, is that you?" Ryan was surprised, immediately recognizing his high school friend. "Yes, it's me. You haven't changed at all, still as greasy as ever." The two hugged. Ryan was not good at expressing his emotions, but his smile showed his joy. After a few greetings, Victor sat down on the old chair in the workshop. "Listen, I read about you online. Turns out you're still the same person you always were, always helping others without expecting anything in return." Victor leaned forward, his eyes serious. "I have a proposition." "Suggestion?" Ryan raised an eyebrow, his hands still busy with the wrench. Ryan shook his head and walked to the wall behind the diner. "Remember that bit, don't you?" Victor stood up and walked around the workshop, looking at everything with the eyes of an investor assessing potential. "This shop is old, Ryan, but I see great potential in it. I want to invest in you. Turn this place into a free community center for auto repair. We will help people in need, like you did for Evelyn." Ryan stopped. "Victor, are you kidding?" "No, I'm serious. I'll pay off your debt. In return, I want you to continue doing what you do best, helping others." Ryan fell silent, bowing his head in thought. For years he had dreamed of doing more for the community, but his finances had always been an obstacle. Calling his brother, he reached for the phone before letting it go to voicemail. "This sounds crazy," Ryan sighed, looking at Victor with suspicion. "Maybe, but think about it. How many people like Evelyn will have a better chance because of this?" Victor stepped closer, patting Ryan on the shoulder. "You told Evelyn that everyone needs a little luck. Today, this is your luck." Ryan chuckled. "What if I say no?" Victor laughed. "Then I'll be back tomorrow." Ryan laughed out loud. For the first time in years, he felt relieved. "Okay, Victor, let's try it. But don't blame me if we get into trouble." "Trouble? Have you forgotten who I am?" Victor replied, smiling confidently. Over the next few months, Ryan's shop underwent a complete overhaul. New machinery was brought in, and the old sign was replaced with a shiny new one that read, "Fit and Folly, Propriety." End of chapter. Hope Car Repair Shop, where miracles begin. Note: Hope Car Repair Shop, where miracles begin. Now, the shop is more than just a repair shop. It also helps single mothers, the unemployed, and those in need. People like Evelyn are back, this time as volunteers. Ryan stood in front of the factory door, looking at the bustling crowd, his heart filled with pride. In the distance, Victor stood with his arms crossed, smiling as if everything had been as he had predicted. Perhaps true kindness always comes back in the most unexpected ways. The auto repair shop now has a completely new look. The large blue sign stands out with the words, "Now available on Felix's." That includes 5 distinct features, like a small comic book store. Hope Car Repair Shop, where miracles begin. Below, a small but meaningful quote. Whenever you have the opportunity, do the same for others. News of this unique repair shop spread throughout the town of Riverside and even made the news. A national television station did a story about the place, interviewing Ryan Walker, Victor Reed, and others who had been helped there. The story begins with a picture of Evelyn Carter, the woman who started it all. The reporter asked her, "What made you decide to share Ryan's story?" Evelyn looked straight into the camera, her eyes shining with determination. "Because I believe the world needs more people like him. If a man can help me without any reason, then I want to do the same for others." Since the garage became a community center, many people in Riverside have volunteered. Retired mechanics, people who were once unemployed, even high school students have pitched in. Some have brought food, others have donated tools and machinery. Evelyn also returned to the shop, but this time not to fix cars. She volunteered to be a member of the volunteer team, taking care of customers waiting for repairs and managing the spare parts warehouse. Her daughter Lily is now doing better thanks to stable medical funds. Every weekend she comes to the shop, bringing a box of homemade cookies for the mechanics. Ryan, who was usually quiet, could no longer escape attention. Every day new people came into the shop, not because their cars were broken down, but because they wanted to see the nice mechanic they had seen on television. "Are you Ryan Walker?" a middle-aged man asked as he entered the workshop. Ryan, wearing an old gray jacket and still working on a truck engine, turned to look at the stranger. "Yes, it's me. Can I help you?" The man looked at Ryan for a long moment, then suddenly smiled, his eyes welling up. "I don't need my car fixed. I just wanted to shake your hand and say thank you. You reminded me that there is still good in this world." Ryan was stunned for a few seconds, then smiled softly. "Well, I don't think I did anything big, but thanks." These moments are becoming more frequent. The townspeople see Ryan as a symbol of kindness. Sometimes customers leave envelopes marked, "For those who need it more than I do," or volunteer to donate old parts or cash to help keep the shop going. One day, an old man with a cane walked into the shop. He wore a thick wool coat and worn shoes, but his eyes were bright. No one in the shop recognized him, except Ryan. "Mr. Sam Hartman?" Ryan stood still, looking at the man he hadn't seen in 20 years. His heart pounded, and his hands dropped the wrench to the ground. My boy has grown up. I heard about him on TV." Mr. Sam smiled, his voice hoarse but full of affection. Ryan stepped closer and hugged his old teacher. Unable to control his emotions, he held onto Mr. Sam's shoulders as if he was afraid he would disappear. "I kept my promise, Mr. Sam. I kept my promise." Ryan's voice broke, choked. "Yes, you did very well, Ryan. Better than I could have imagined." Mr. Sam looked around the workshop, smiling proudly. "Now, keep going. You've come a long way, but there are still many people who need you." Mr. Sam sat back in the workshop, drinking a cup of hot tea that Evelyn brought. This scene made Ryan realize that everything he did, from the past to the present, was more meaningful than he had ever thought. Ryan's story has spread far beyond Riverside. Several other towns have followed his example. Auto repair shop owners in other states, have contacted Victor Reed to learn about the Community Repair Center model. Price supplementing food pantries, airlines providing departure options, auto repair shops for customers. The free repair program gradually became more organized. Victor Reed proposed the creation of a New Cars, New Hope fund, a fund to sponsor auto shops nationwide to do the same. Large companies also began to donate machinery, parts, and funds. Ryan's story was no longer unique to the town of Riverside. One sunny morning, a little girl walked into the workshop with her mother. She had curly hair, bright eyes, and a pale pink coat. It was Lily, Evelyn's daughter. "Uncle Ryan!" Lily ran to hug Ryan's legs. He sat down and patted her head. "How are you, kid?" Ryan smiled, his eyes shining with joy. "I'm fine. Mom said I could help people like you. Is there anything I can do?" The little girl looked at him with hopeful eyes. Ryan laughed. "Then I can help you hand out cookies. That would be great." She ran around the factory, bringing cookies to the mechanics. Lily's smiles and giggles filled the space with happiness. That afternoon, Ryan walked out the door of the workshop, hands in his pockets, looking up at the shiny new sign. The words, "Where Miracles Begin," seemed to glow in the warm yellow sunlight. He could feel the cool breeze blowing past, Lily's laughter, and the clatter of hammers from inside the workshop. Victor stepped out, stood next to him, and patted his friend on the shoulder. "So, what do you think, boss?" Victor asked, arms crossed, smiling. "I am not the boss. Everyone here is the boss." Ryan looked around, his eyes stopping at the people he had helped. "But I think this is home." They stood there silently, no need to say another word. It was clear now, kindness can change not just one person, but a whole community. The sign above sparkles in the sunlight, like a lighthouse, illuminating those who have lost their way on their difficult path. And there, the miracles continue to begin. Today's story reminds us that sometimes a small act can start a big miracle. Kindness doesn't have to be loud, but its power can spread beyond what we can imagine. If you've ever been helped by someone, remember that you have the power to do the same for others. Don't forget to like, share, and follow kindness stories so you don't miss out on stories that touch your heart. Let's spread kindness together, because the world needs more miracles like this.